In today's video, we are covering the 20 most popular apps that you 100% definitely should be at least knowing about inside n8n. We're breaking this down into two sections. First is going to be external apps. Second is going to be internal apps. So we're going to start with internal apps here. And at number 10, we have Airtable, which is a very popular app to essentially store all of your information in. If you guys aren't familiar with Airtable, this is essentially what it looks like. And so I could go ahead as an example and have an entire content production machine in here where I can add, for instance, all of my creative ideas that I want to film videos about. So for example, I could fill out a form here. I could add that information straight into this Airtable document here. So all of a sudden I can have like the date when I added something, the video that I want to film, the type of video it is, whether it's long format, short format, what the urgency is, all of that kind of stuff, inspiration from other ideas out there online already, all of that kind of stuff can be added straight into Airtable automatically from n8n. You could even plug this into like a web scraper and then automatically extract this data online, which we'll kind of be talking a bit more about later on. Now, the next thing that you can also do inside Airtable is that you can also turn it into, and I think this is so cool, but you can turn it into a full-blown web application where all of a sudden, like let's say you want to choose something like an option here, you can all of a sudden trigger things from within n8n. Specifically, you can take thousands of different actions. So for instance, if I had like an email checkbox here, I could like check off this button, for instance, which would trigger this workflow, which then could send off an email over here. I could also do things like send messages to my team in Slack. I could create project tasks for them from within ClickUp, or I could add files, for instance, to Google Drive. And there's, again, a million and one things that we can do here. But for that reason, Airtable is an incredibly popular tool just because it's a great way to store all of your information. n8n doesn't really have a good way built in to be able to store it. And for that reason, this is number 10. Now let's move on to number 9 here, which is Anthropic. So I'm going to go ahead and activate this particular module here, and I'm just going to deactivate these two up top here. With Anthropic, this is the second most popular large language model inside n8n to use, and it gives fantastic results. Now, one other thing that I want to kind of point out here is that inside Anthropic, what's really cool is that until recently, and ChatGPT 5 also has this functionality too, but you can enable thinking. So in a nutshell, you can have it slow down, really think through the answers and make sure that it gives the best response possible. Just like in every aspect of life, if you had more time to plan, the execution would likely be better. Same kind of deal with this. And so for instance, we can open up the chat and I can just ask this question, what's the largest city in the world? And here's the response back that it gives. Now, keep in mind, this is with enabled thinking. And when you have enabled thinking, you don't necessarily want to immediately respond back with a response. This is great if it has to call certain tools over here and it has to process either like a variety of complicated tasks. That's where this enable thinking really shines. And so it can really think through and give the best answer. In this case, it goes ahead and says it is Tokyo City with a population of about 38 million people. And so for that reason, on this list, number 9 is Anthropic. Now, moving past this, at number 8, we have Gemini over here. And so with Gemini, there's just so many different things that you can do with this tool. So just for example here, what we could do is we could work with documents, we could work with audio files, we could work with images, and then below, I hope my face isn't blocking this, we can also work with videos down here as well. So let's kind of take a look and see what this looks like. So on the video side of things, I gave the prompt, create a cinematic surfer, and this is what it came up with. And keep in mind, this isn't VO3, this is only VO2, and they've just incorporated in here VO3 as well that you can use. You can also analyze videos. No other large language model inside n8n has the ability to do this yet. So for instance, we could feed in that exact surfer video, and we could be like, hey, tell me what this is actually about. And it can go ahead and it can actually give you information on this, which to me is game changing because now we can start analyzing videos and start getting real feedback on, you know, perhaps things that we can improve or things that we could, you know, not do if you're filming videos and you want to get AI to analyze it or whatever the case may be. There's a lot of different use cases for this. We could also generate images too. So for instance, we could go ahead and generate that exact same surf scene. Cool. And at number 6, we have Telegram. Now, to me, Telegram is just super popular just because it's likely the easiest messaging platform to integrate into your AI agents over here outside of the built-in chat functionality that n8n offers out of the box. The other thing cool too about Telegram is just the fact that it can process both audio messages and it can process text messages as well. So we can go ahead and test this out. Hey, can you tell me a funny joke? So let's go ahead and see if that actually is funny, which I don't have high hopes that it will be, but essentially it can go up, we can process that audio file, transcribe it to text, we can merge. What this is doing is we're just essentially saying whether we're processing a text message or an audio message. We're gonna use the actual text from the audio message or the text message in the AI agent, and then we're gonna send that joke back. So let's go ahead and see what it says here. Here's a funny one. Why don't eggs tell jokes? They crack each other up. Okay, that was a solid 2 out of 10. Thank you. Thank you very much, Anthropic AI, for that. But anyways, that's the next one on the list here, Telegram, at number 6. Now, at number 5, what we have here is Slack. And so this is super popular, obviously, because another messaging platform could be communicating with AI agents through Slack, right? Especially for internal use. Maybe you want to set up an AI agent for your team to be able to communicate back and forth with, get the answers they're looking for questions instead of having to like ask a manager instead, right? So it's kind of like a first layer of defense here. But essentially in this particular workflow here, what we can do is we can have a chat, okay? And so what I could do is I could say something like, hey, n8n cloud, and I can tag the bot here, and I can say, tell me the weather. And so we can go ahead, execute this, and again, we're gonna receive that message just like Telegram. We're going to generate a response and then send that back. And then here we go. Why don't weather forecasters ever get invited to parties? Because they always bring a 50% chance of rain on everyone's parade. Okay, that's actually slightly better than the last one. Okay, I'm pretty jazzed about that one. Cool. At number 4, the fourth most popular app inside n8n is ChatGPT over here. And so there's just so many different things that we can do with ChatGPT, but here's a couple options. We can generate images, okay? So we can take a look and see the image over here that was generated. And so this is kind of an example of what you can do from ChatGPT. Let's cross compare that with Gemini over here, which personally, I actually like both. I think that both are pretty good images. I wouldn't necessarily say one is better than the other based on that, but let me know what you guys think as well. The other thing that we can do here is we can analyze images. You can also do this in Gemini too, where you can feed in that particular image and we can just ask, tell me what's going on in this picture. And it's gonna go ahead and describe it to you. A surfer riding inside a wave during sunset. Why this is kind of cool is there's a lot of different possible use cases, but you could like analyze an image that you generate using AI, and then you could create a caption based on the image. So it can scan the image, understand what it is, then generate captions based on that. And so that's just one use case scenario. We can also generate audio messages too. So let's go ahead and listen to this. I'm just gonna go ahead and just play this.
Whisper of falling rain to the roar of a rocket launch. This is the sound of your imagination brought to life.
What I also think is kind of cool about this, and this is just me, like, I really like the fact that there's like a different cadence there. It feels like she was like, the AI voice was kind of slowing down. And then it was also speeding up in cadence too, which I think is pretty impressive because I don't think that's super easy or manageable to do using AI. Now, the last thing that I want to go over here using ChatGPT is the fact that we can also translate or transcribe messages. So for instance, we could take that particular audio file, and if that was like in French or Spanish, we could translate that to English, but we can also transcribe it from audio into text too. So obviously really cool stuff. Now, the next thing that I want to go over here, which is super, super popular, is Gmail. So pretty much, most of the world, I would imagine, uses Gmail. And there's just so many cool use cases that we can have inside our n8n application. So for instance, one of the best things that I use this for in my opinion, is I'll wait for emails to come in to my Gmail inbox here, okay? And so as soon as an email comes in, I'll tag these emails, or I'll label them based on my custom labels over here, and it'll do that instantly. Now, other things that we can do here is, if you get a lot of just junk mail or e-commerce mail that, let's be honest, pretty much nobody actually enjoys getting, you can go ahead and delete that, or just mark it as read and then remove it from your inbox. And so you can also create draft messages as well, if you'd like. And of course, you could just automatically send these. It's just that, like, for me, I would rather make sure I get a double take on whatever it is I'm sending out, because nothing would be worse than sending out something and then, face palming afterwards, being like, crap, that was probably not the best message to send out to somebody, right? Cool. Other than that, we can forward off emails to like our accountants. Let's say we have invoices coming in or receipts coming in from our email. We can automatically forward that off to our accountants, or send that off to like pre-processed in QuickBooks automatically. And then we can create tasks for our team to do depending on the email coming in. So that's just another example. Now, at the third spot inside n8n is HTTP modules. Now, this is really, really game changing, because inside n8n, there's maybe only like 1,000 applications here. If we were to scroll down the list, it's not actually that many. And if we were to compare this to something like Zapier, not that it's like a competition at all, but if we were just to compare it to, Zapier, they have 7,000 app integrations. If we were to compare this to make.com, if we went over to their integrations, they should have probably over 2,000. Let's just go to the integrations tab over here. Yeah, so they have quite a few thousand, 2,820. And so the point that I'm trying to make here is just that there's a lot of different applications that n8n doesn't have. And so just because they don't have native integrations into a particular application doesn't mean that you can't ultimately connect it through n8n. You just need to know how to do that. And that is where these HTTP modules come out. So all of these apps here, like Google Sheets or Xero for accounting or Zoom or whatever, these are all kind of just HTTP requests that the n8n team has gone out and developed on your behalf, so you can just drag and drop and play with that. But with the HTTP methods here, you can integrate it into literally any other application on the internet that allows you to connect into it. You just have to essentially know how to do this kind of stuff, like what method it is or URL. And I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty detail here, but what you can do is you can just ask ChatGPT, hey, can you tell me exactly how to do this kind of stuff? Chances are it's going to know exactly what to do and how to insert this kind of stuff into it. And you can get this up and running pretty quickly and then integrate into whatever other thousands of other applications it is that you want to use. Just one example here would be Appify. This is one thing that I loved, which recently was added into n8n, but until it was added in, you had to use an HTTP request. And so you'd go into like appify.com documentation, and you'd have to play around with this. So if I went into this, let's just say I wanted to, for instance, run a web scraper to be able to scrape data off of, let's say a platform like Yellow Pages, for instance. We could come in here to the documentation, we could hit this, and then we could essentially more or less just copy this whole thing in here, come back in, and we could just import via curl, and we could just paste that in here, and this will literally just import the whole thing in, and we're 99% of the way there. It's added in the URL, it's added in the method, it's added in the headers, all of this kind of stuff. It tells you just need the token there, and you're pretty much good to go. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about here at number 2 is AI agents. So kind of already alluded to this a couple times before, but obviously this is incredibly popular inside n8n. This is a huge reason that a lot of people come to this platform in the first place. And so a lot of cool ideas that you can do with AI agents. Just one example would be creating a knowledge base on your company using a process called RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation. You can think about it like a really insanely intelligent frequently asked questions page where a customer could message your company being like, what's your pricing? And then it will tell you the exact pricing based on the information you put into that database, because that's a database on the information or everything to know about your company. And so what you can do here is you could, of course, have AI agents do all of the heavy lifting for you. You could have something like a knowledge base here. You could connect it into tens of or thousands of other tools inside n8n. You can also add in a model here, which is kind of like a brain. It's like ChatGPT, which will think and reason on behalf of the agent to come up or formulate a response, pick the tools that it needs to use, a memory so that it can remember past messages, and have just like ChatGPT, you can ask follow-up questions. Same kind of deal with the memory here. It saves all the past messages so that it can remember that and pull that in for context. And then, you can add in all the tools that you want over here, and you can send messages back and forth. Very similarly to how you'd ask an employee to do something. You could be like, hey, can you, send me this PDF report? It would go ahead, process this just like an employee, and then send that back to you. Now, the last thing and the most popular option here, the most popular app until we move on to the built-in applications, is Google Sheets. Now, personally, I use this an incredible amount of times. This is definitely the one that I use the most. But in a nutshell here, what we can do is we can build out a full web application, very similar to Airtable, like I showed you before. We can just do all of that kind of stuff. So for instance, we can add information straight into Google Sheets here. So I can web scrape the entire, so many platforms get inspiration from so many different places, and then add that straight into my Google Sheet here so that I can go through and just check off the ones I like, cross out the ones I don't like, and then I can use those for inspiration when I'm filming, for instance. You could also use this for recruitment or a CRM for your business. You could use this for any processes that you're currently using, right? So it's very versatile. There's a million and one things that you can do. But the super cool thing about this is that you can actually turn this into a web application, just like I was showing before. One example of that would be that I like to use this as a content management or content production system, where I literally have the entire pipeline over here. Oops, not over there, in this column right here. And essentially I can track up to 30 videos at any given time, idea or pending idea approval, scheduled, assets required, pending published, all this kind of stuff. And anytime I check off one of these buttons here, it will automatically start this particular workflow here. And I can do things like notify my team when they have to do something. I can create tasks for them inside ClickUp. I could I could upload things to Google Drive, or I could, create folders in Google Drive to keep us nice and organized, which is really, really helpful. Create Google Docs. List goes on. There's a million and one things that you can do. Those are just a couple that I use. Now, I want to throw in 2 bonuses in here just because I think they're incredibly useful to mention, even though they don't make the top 10 list. And what that would be is, first of all, Google Drive over here. And so with Google Drive, lots of different stuff you can do. You can automatically organize and rename and move files and all of that kind of stuff. And so what I like to think about it is, for instance, with Google Drive here, you can organize everything. When I came in and I saw this just looked really disorganized and kind of gave me a lot of anxiety, just seeing so many different documents everywhere, super disorganized. And you can just automatically clean that up so that all of a sudden you don't have any files out of place here, which I think is super cool. Of course, you can upload files, do all that kind of stuff as well. And lastly, we also have webhooks that I want to kind of talk about as a second bonus here. And so with webhooks, we can essentially receive data inside n8n from external applications. Probably the most classic example would be that somebody fills out a quote form on your website. They hit, the flashy, submit or let's talk button, and then all this information automatically gets sent over to n8n. Okay. So what a webhook is you can think about it like a server that, is just running 24/7, 365 days of the year, never sleeps, never takes a day off, never takes a second off. Anytime a particular action happens, like for example, you or somebody submitting a form over here, this data is going to automatically send that information inside n8n. And then as soon as it's retrieved here, it's going to start the workflow and do whatever you want it to do. And so this is just a way to collect information or start a workflow from external applications that might not natively have a built-in integration inside n8n. So a lot of things, they don't actually have a built-in integration in n8n. Doesn't mean you can't still, start workflows. And one of the best ways to do that would be using webhooks. So these just wait to receive information from third-party websites that wouldn't otherwise necessarily be listed here. Very similarly to HTTP requests over here. Main distinction is webhooks wait for incoming data. HTTP requests, you can grab data inside a particular workflow in n8n. Cool. And so now that we've covered half of this, what I want to do is actually move over to the second half where we cover the top 10 best built-in tools inside n8n. So I'm going to start with a very basic one here, which is just this built-in click trigger here. This is literally the most popular one. I just want to start with the most popular here just because that would kind of be a buzzkill in my opinion if I worked all the way up to this and was like, oh, you know, it's the built-in trigger. It's like the first one you've ever come across in your entire life using n8n. But this is just super popular because everyone uses this for testing purposes. Now at number 10, we have a tie between split out, aggregate, and loop over. So let me give you a classic example here. Okay, so we have a grocery list here and we have items that we need to pick up from the grocery store. Let's say we have 3 items on this list. Okay, the 3 items are apples, bananas, and mangoes. And we want to add this to our grocery store list. So what a split out does is it can go through each item one by one. You can see we start with one item here, then we end up going through those 3 items on the list one by one. And so what we're doing is we're taking that list, we're going through it one by one, we're adding it into the Google Sheet here. And so now we have all 3 items separated on this Google Sheet here. Okay. Now what an aggregator does is it does the inverse of a split out. It essentially restores it to the previous state. So instead of having 3 items that we're going through one by one, we just merge them together. So now we have a list again. Okay, so it goes from list to going through them one by one to add them into the Google spreadsheet. And then say we want to reverse it and go back into a list again, we use an aggregate and then it sends that back to a list with the 3 items here. Now, this might be useful because maybe you want to send off an email once a day with like a report. And it's like, here's all the leads that we got from our website for today. Everyone that filled out this website then automatically gets added to the report and then that gets sent off to you over here. Cool. So that is just one example here. Now, another example that is also kind of in here is this loop functionality, which is super important to know. And it's also, there's a slight distinction between these two. So first of all, loops happen when you're going through multiple items. So when you have 3, you can do a loop. And what this essentially does is it allows you to add things one at a time. So typically speaking, this gets processed instantly and all 3 are just dumped into this Google Sheet at the exact same second, okay? But if we do this again and we do a loop over, what's gonna happen is it's going to add them one by one. It's gonna start with apples, then we're gonna wait a second, and then it's going to process the next thing, which is bananas. Then we're going to wait another second, and then it's going to process mangoes finally. Whereas before, it would have processed literally all 3 at the same time. Why this is important is because when you're using an application like n8n, all of these apps like Google Sheets, for example, or whatever, all these other ones, they have something called rate limiting. So like, let's say you're processing 10,000 different line items at the same time. This would throw an error being like, hold on a second, you can't process 10,000 things at the same time, because they might think you're like trying to break the system or hack in or do something fishy or whatever. And so they're going to shut you off. You can send a certain amount of requests in a given amount of time. In Google Sheets, that's 300 requests per minute. So if you're to send 10,000 in 2 seconds, it would shut off. And so with this loop, what you can do is you can go through them one by one, and you can set a wait time here for 1 second, which means that you'd never hit that rate limit. You can go through and make sure that your workflow doesn't break all the time. Cool. So the next thing that I want to talk about here for number 8 is forms over here. So forms are super powerful inside n8n. You can essentially submit information and then trigger a workflow. Okay. So for instance, you could have a lead form over here where somebody submits information like their first name, last name, email, phone number, and message. And then we could go ahead and send ourselves an internal notification. We could even send off a message to ourselves as well. Now, past this form, the next thing that's super, super important to use is the wait step here. So a practical example would be they fill out that form here, okay? And we send off an email, but maybe you don't want to sound like super robotic where you're like, in like a matter of a quarter of a second, as soon as they like their finger lifts off of the return button, you might not want to send it immediately, because then they're gonna be like, yeah, that's like 100% AI, or that's 100% automated. You might want to make it seem a bit more authentic or a bit more human-like, where you maybe wait like a minute, 2 or 3 minutes to send that email off. And so stuff like that could definitely help out as well. Cool. So moving on to the next thing at number 7 is we have the merge over here. Okay. And so what merge does is it combines 2 paths. So if you remember, we were talking about the AI agent, specifically Telegram, where when we receive a message, we might have an audio file, just like before, where we received an audio file down here. My face might be blocking that. I apologize if it is. But we can also receive a text message over here. And so the thing is that now we have to automatically handle both of these outcomes, but we want it to go into the same AI agent over here, right? And so how we do that is we make sure we have a merge node here, which we're taking the outcome from path A and from path B, we're merging it together into one path moving forward, so that we just use the text from here. Okay, so that is what the merge node does. Now past this, we have a code node here, which is super beneficial. Now with code nodes, you can essentially run JavaScript in here. Now, this might look scary to you, and I would say for probably 99.9% of you out there, you might not have a very strong background in coding, and you certainly do not have to. You can just go into ChatGPT and you could just ask it to write the code for you. So if you have a particular use case, you can say, hey, write me some code to do whatever, and it will go ahead and it will literally write that for you. One use case could be that maybe you want to extract PDF files, okay, from your Gmail inbox, and then you want to upload them into Google Drive over here. With this code node, you can automatically extract all attachments, and there could be 1 attachment, there could be 10 attachments per email, and then it can go through those one by one, and then upload that into Google Drive. And so that's just one use case scenario. You could also go ahead and do things like, for instance, over here, maybe you want to web scrape, information on somebody's LinkedIn profile, and maybe you want to run this through like AI, okay? And you want to create a customized outreach message to them. Like maybe you want to like combine all of these different fields here, but there's just 1,000,001 fields that you could add in. And so with a code node here, you can literally just automatically extract all those fields into one text block here, and then pass that into AI so that you have everything all together very nicely immediately. So that really was a game changer for me. Cool. Moving past this, the next thing that I want to talk about is schedules. Okay. And so with a scheduler, I think this is number 5, maybe number 4, but with this, what we can do is we can automatically run workflows at a given time interval. So you could say, hey, I want to run once a day. I want to run once every hour, once every minute, once every second, once every week, month, or we can have a custom expression in here to have some custom interval that you want to run your n8n workflows at. And so this is beautiful just because, one of the beautiful things about this is that it removes you from having to start the workflow. Now all of a sudden you can just run it at some cadence, whether it's once a day, once a week, and you don't even have to think about the process of starting it. It just is taken care of automatically for you without you having to do literally anything. And for that reason, I think this is really powerful. I try to use these as frequently as possible. Cool. Next thing that I want to talk about here is the edit node here. And so this is one of the most common ones, maybe the second most common one here, and it's incredibly powerful. And so let's go ahead, let's run this, let's talk about this. So if I open up this edit field here, what we can do here is so many different things. There's just 1,000,001 things we can do here. We can change the data type of particular data. So for instance, we have something called an array here, which is just a list. We can think about it like that list, that grocery store list, right? And so we can change this from just generic text over here, okay, to our actual kind of array here. And so now we actually have a list. So if I was to go back and change this to a string, for instance, it would output this as string. Okay, we know it's a string because it has these quotation marks on each side, but we can actually change the entire data type to an array, and now it's a legit list. over here. Next thing we can do is we can run functions on things. So inside n8n, we could do something like a substring function or a toTitle case function. So this is a bit easier. We start with lowercase names, and then we can capitalize people's names automatically. So it capitalizes the J here and the C over there. Another one is substring, which essentially limits the amount of characters in a text. This is great if you want to make like a tweet and you had to limit it to 270 characters. And let's say you had a block of text that was 500 characters, you could literally limit it to 270 characters just by doing this. In a nutshell, it takes in a line of text over here, okay, like, hey, my name is Jono, and then you write dot substring over here, and then you limit it to a certain amount of characters. So if I limited it to 1 character, it would literally just take that H. If I limited it to 2 characters, it would take the H and the E. If I limited it to 3 characters, the Y in there as well, so on and so forth. You can also run math equations in here and all that kind of stuff. So 2 times 2 equals 4. And so for that reason, super powerful stuff. You can manipulate a lot of different data in here. And the next thing that I want to talk about here, which is the final thing, is if nodes, switch statements, and filters. Now these are all super similar. So let's go ahead and let's say we have a form here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and execute this. And we're going to talk about all 3 of these. Now, this form has a couple questions. First of all, we're asking what the person's name is, what the person's email is down here or over here, what their budget is, what service they want, and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so service, this is a drop down. They have 3 different options over here. Cool. So with an if statement, we only have, 1 condition over here, like that we're checking against. You can add like multiple conditions, I guess, but it's either one path or it's another. Okay. And so we're just checking to see if something's true or false. It's either true or false. That's essentially it. If it's true, it goes down the true path. If it's false, it goes down the false path. So in a nutshell, we could ask it, hey, is the budget of the client that filled out this form, okay, is their budget above $1,000? It's either true or it's false. And so in this instance, it is exactly $1,000, and we had a filter in here saying, is it greater than or equal to? And because it's greater than or equal to $1,000, it goes down the true path. If it was $200, then it'll go down the false path. Next thing here is a switch statement. Very, very similar to the if statement over here, but with the switch statement, essentially you can have multiple different routes. You're not limited to both true or false. And so with the switch statement, for instance, you could say, hey, what service are you? Are you landscaping? Are you lawn mowing? Are you hardscaping? And depending on what you select here, it's going to go down a different path. And so why this is important is because if you're doing landscaping or hardscaping or lawn mowing, you could have different pricing and you could customize emails to that person when they fill out the form automatically. And so the last thing here is the filter. And this is very, very similar to the if statement over here, where all of a sudden you only pass and let data through if the answer is true. So if it matches the condition, like the budget is over $1,000, then it would move through. And so the only distinction really is that with an if statement, you have a false path where you could say, if it doesn't match the criteria, then it goes to another route. With the filter, it's like, if it doesn't match the criteria, it doesn't pass through and you just eliminate that from the sequence. Now, the only drawback of using switch and if, just because you might be thinking, well, switch might be way better because you could just have unlimited routes. The only downside inside n8n is that you can only have like 1 condition here. So the service is either landscaping or the service is lawn mowing or the service is hardscaping. But with the if statement over here, you can have multiple conditions. So you could be like, if the budget is $1,000 and if the service is landscaping. And so you can have 2 conditions over here instead of 1. And so that's kind of the distinction between if or switch. And so these are all really, really similar. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Hope you found value in it. If you did, make sure to take a look at my school community where, I help people out just like yourself accomplish 3 things. Number 1, learn these tools so that you're an expert in them. Number 2, I help people automate up to 80% of their existing business. I'll give you the exact blueprints and templates I use to scale to 7 figures. And then lastly, I help people create AI automation agencies so they can start making money with all these tools and all that kind of stuff. And so that's essentially it, guys. Really appreciate your time. Thank you very much for watching. If you're new to the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button, or if you've been watching for like a year and you still haven't hit that subscribe button, make sure to do that as well. Thanks so much, guys. Have a lovely day, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks, and bye-bye.